Hey Coyote fans, recently the Yote Fund was introduced by Coyote Athletics and a brochure sent out, a lot of information, and I know there's been a lot of questions in regards to the Yote Fund, so we bring in Athletic Director Jon Schemmel to help us understand a little bit more about the Yote Fund. John, first of all, let's start with why the Yote Fund? Why right now? Is this a good time to introduce this thing and begin a new avenue?
Yeah, I think a combination of a lot of things. One, so much change in our industry, obviously, and with the House settlement and all of that. But I think, when it comes to the Yote Fund and the giving model, this isn't just because of a House settlement or the changing of Division I athletics. It's more setting up a comprehensive model that represents our donor base and fan base much better than the current system does right now. So, and what I mean by that is, ultimately, if we have someone that's buying season tickets and they're spending $5,000 a year on that, but for them that's their priority and that's what they've spent it on. Well, we haven't really done a good job of recognizing that $5,000 in totality. Or if I spend, a few $1,000s going to golf outings, or if I give $1 million for a capital project, things like that. Those things haven't really counted in and shown kind of the real cumulative giving of all of our donors and fans. And so this is really a way for us to hopefully bring more people in for sure, but also I think be a much truer representation of what each fan is doing, how much financial support they are giving in totality each year. Because at the end of the day, if you're spending $10,000 a year on season tickets, or you're donating that to a capital project or to a track excellence fund or whatever it is, we want to recognize the $10,000 for the $10,000. And the old setup didn't really do that. We were really only tracking Howling Pack donations through the ticket system. Those are the only things really triggering points. And so it wasn't a true representation of our fan base, wasn't a true representation of a lot of our donors and what they were doing. And so really this is a concept I implemented at Miami. But you look at Nebraska has gone to a system like this. Kansas State's a school I've admired since my dad worked there when I was 6. And I always say there's not a school out there that does more with less than Kansas State. And this is a model that more and more schools are going to, and so it's something I wanted to implement. And then I think with all the changes that have been going on over the last year, it just seemed like the right time. And Ben LeCompte coming here from Kansas State, having some familiarity there, I implemented something similar at Miami. So we just worked together and felt it was the right time to do this. But it's more about that. This is not just a settlement-driven thing. Yes, we do need more money, but this isn't a fund or a setup to try to just get at more money. I think a lot of people will find out that they're going to get all the same things that they've had, just in a model that because it's new and confusing. It's just that it's new and confusing. But I think once we get through a few months or a year of this, it's a much simpler way to set it up. And I know if I'm given 10 grand through tickets and all these other donations, I know that 10 grand is going to be represented as a donor and a fan.
People looked at the brochure with all the information and they thought this isn't simpler, but it's more of understanding. It seems like the goal of the Yote Fund is to recognize the giving of fans a little bit more and reward them in a better way.
That's exactly right, and I think. And that's just it. It's more representative of your total commitment to it. And then there's some other things that we're doing and changing benefits. Our premium areas and hospitality areas, we get more complaints in those areas each year than any other area that we have. And mainly just with some of the rules that were set up, it just becomes really impossible within our staff and resources to manage that. And so inevitably we end up overcorrecting and it's too strict and we keep someone out that should be allowed in, or, too many people get in, or heaven forbid, South Dakota State fans get in or something like that. And that upsets a bunch of people. So it's trying to set up, there's a lot of different moving parts to it, but trying to set up not only the all-encompassing model, but to put more priority on having courtside seats and club seats to have access to this area is one example of that, and then increasing the donation level outside of that. But we want to drive people not only purchase courtside seats and club seats, but attend, right, and show up. And it makes it easier for us to manage. When it's easier for us to manage, we can put a better product together and deliver that to fans. So there's a lot of different aspects, and there's a lot of different goals that we're trying to accomplish with it. But at its core, it's just to better represent each family, each donor, each fan.
So over the last several years, our fans have gotten used to the idea of the Howling Pack. Mm-hmm. Is the Howling Pack still operating, number one? And if I'm making membership payments, where's that go now, the Howling Pack or the Yote Fund?
Yeah, so yes, the Howling Pack still exists. And the way I always describe this, and the staff makes fun of me because I'm a big whiteboard guy. I got a whiteboard in my office, and I demanded we have a whiteboard in our meeting room, and it was so I could make like one illustration, and it was just to have this overarching Yote Fund thing, and then have a bunch of lines underneath it that are all the athletic funds and the ticket office and everything like that. And that makes it easier to describe. But the Howling Pack is very much an important part of what we do. Nothing changes whether you're giving to the Howling Pack Scholarship Fund. Again, that's just a piece now of your total Yote Fund score, so to speak. But the Howling Pack is still critical. And then I think the seat license program that we're implementing is just more to be up with industry standards. We are very far below our competition as far as what our seat licensing program was. In football alone, our 50-yard line seats were about 10% of our competitors to the north. Even this increase probably only gets us to about 30% of those costs. And so we have to be competitive in the market as well, and the seat licensing program will help accomplish that. And so really just to kind of build off the Howling Pack brand, it's just a Howling Pack seat licensing program. All those changes date back to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act in 1718. And so anything that's a seat license, technically the IRS wouldn't say that's deductible. And so every department in the country made changes around that. And so really we're just building off of those things to have it be a more comprehensive thing. But the Howling Pack is still every bit as critical. People will still send their checks in to the foundation. I think one service thing that we will be able to do better now is through our ticket office, we'll be able to take all seat license payments and ticket purchases, whereas previously we've only been set up where they could only take ticket purchases and then you'd have to go to the foundation for everything else. Now we can take seat license and the ticket purchases through the ticket office, and I think that'll be a good customer service thing that comes out of this too. We're
going to come back to the seat license here in just a little bit. I know there's a lot of questions on what impacts the Yote Fund level. Let's say, obviously, NIL right now is a huge thing in college athletics at every level. Everybody's trying to find a way to make it work for them, right?
Yep.
If I give to the NIL collective and get into that area, does that impact my Yote Fund level?
Yeah, so that's the one thing that we cannot count yet. And the main reason for that, actually, now this does go back to the settlement, is we are not opting in to the settlement at this point. And I can say with a high level of confidence that none of the Dakota schools are planning to opt in at this point. The four of us ADs have had a lot of conversations about it. I think we all see that it's probably inevitable that we opt in. There's just still so many unanswered questions with that. But without opting in, for us, what that means is we basically can't control the collective, right? It still has to be a third-party entity. So now if we're giving points for those things, then all of a sudden now the NCAA would say, wait a minute, you are controlling your collective and things like that. So schools that are either, one, they're offering tax deductibility for it, but it's through state income tax. I certainly don't think anyone out there is going to ask me to advocate for state income tax in the state of South Dakota so they can get a tax deduction. And so, but that's the loophole that a lot of those states have found. And then the other thing that allows them to do is they're opting in, which means now they essentially are buying the NIL rights to their student athletes. And so now it's just kind of controlling that bucket of money under their influence and their control. So I think there'll be a time when we do get there, but per NCAA rules right now and our decision to not opt in, that's the main reason we cannot count NIL into this.
How about when we look at tickets? I know we push season tickets for everything all of the time, and it gives you great benefits of always having your one seat, and you get comfortable with the people around you. But let's say I'm a busy parent with kids running around. I don't know how many games I can go to, and I want to purchase tickets on a single game basis. Does that go towards the Yote Fund level?
Those do not. And single game tickets, we actually talked about that quite a bit. Because there certainly be circumstances where, it would work. But again, we're setting up rules within a database and computer systems, right? So they have to pull on these rules. And the reason we can't do that, there's a couple. One, if you're just buying season tickets, it's really hard to track. And then the second part of that is we have the President's Offer here, which a lot of single game tickets get purchased through that. Ultimately, those people aren't buying those tickets and they're running through the President's Offer. And so we wouldn't want the computer system to start tracking and handing out points to those individuals that aren't making purchases. So, again, something as we continue to grow and assess and things change, those can be things we revisit, but the tracking element of that is really the challenge for us.
So season tickets, that's another benefit to season tickets because that can go towards the Yote Fund level. How about, there's different levels of season tickets, right? I could get premium season tickets. I could get a little bit upper level season tickets. Do all of them count towards the Yote Fund, or is it just certain season tickets?
Yeah, no, every season ticket counts, right? And I think, and back to that, and part of the discussion is why not to count single game tickets is we want to encourage people to buy season tickets. There are season tickets in every one of our venues that you do not need to make an additional seat license payment for. And I think I said this in one of our previous interviews, the difference between having 6,000 or 7,000 people in the Dakota Dome versus selling it out or close to it is anywhere from 50 to 100 grand per game, right? And so we talk about some of these challenges and gaps that we have between us and the schools that everybody wants us to beat. They're consistent week-to-week buildups of those things that add up to $5, $6, $7, $8 million a year that make a difference in our budget, and that is what the gap is right now. It's a good $5 to $8, $9, $10 million a year that schools like SDSU, NDSU, Montana State, they're up in the 30s, low 30s, high 20s. SDSU. We're a little bit over 20 is from a cash standpoint. We're 25 all in, but NCAA has some goofy things with that show budgets a little bit differently. But those things matter, and I think getting people to understand, right, every decision to not purchase a ticket, the decision to not buy season tickets, and then typically people have the ability to influence their friends and their circles around them, and so we really want to push people into buying season tickets. We want to reward the people that buy season tickets regardless of the location or the cost of those, because those things make a massive difference for us. And I think that's hopefully what if people take nothing else from this, it's reinstilling the belief of your $50, your $10, your $100, your $1,000. It does make a difference, and it does add up, and because you deciding to spend $20 probably influences a handful of people around you to spend $20 as well, and you can just take that example layer by layer, and so we wanted to have something that showed representation to I guess pull more people in and recognize them. But we also wanted to reward people for doing things like donating and buying season tickets and things like that.
Help me understand as we circle back now the per seat license. It's a fee now, different levels for different sports, things like that, but they get tacked on to the season tickets. Is that simply out-of-pocket costs? Do Howling Pack donations cover that? What covers that that per seat license, or is it simply just more out-of-pocket for me?
Yeah, I think it would depend on the customer, right? As we've fielded questions for this quickly, several of the people we've talked to have called that said, had questions, well, wait a minute, I give $2,000 a year right now, and so what's going to change for me? And we've been able to walk through it with them of, essentially for $2,000, your 4 season tickets, your 4 seat license payments will be covered in that, and then your $600 tailgate spot gets you to $2,000. So nothing would have to change necessarily for that individual, because it all does add up and stack. Now, we certainly hope and encourage people to dig a little bit deeper when they can, but we very intentionally built this model where it wasn't meant to be punitive towards people that have been loyal to us for a decade or more, right? We didn't want to build something that went from, $100 to $1,000 for someone that has been loyal to us. I think the whole thing was built to make sure we're competitive in pricing in our market, in our industry, but that everyone can kind of come around and for the most part, a lot of people are going to get similar to the same things that they've had before. But it's a model that might bring more people in because, hey, I might be really passionate about tennis here and want to give $5 or $10 grand a year to tennis, but I'm not getting any benefit of that on where I might be able to sit at a football game. And we're trying to do something that brings all those groups together, but also encourages people to buy those tickets as well.
The Coyote Brotherhood has become more visible in the last several years and have done really great work to help the football program in so many different ways. If I make a contribution to the Coyote Brotherhood, does that count towards the Yote Fund level?
Yes, and that's a great example of why to do this, right? Because the Brotherhood, for those that don't know, is essentially a football alumni group that's volunteer created and is in their own right. They're fundraising well into six figures a year for the football program now. They've been instrumental to our growth, but in the old system, those donations would not be recognized within the system, so to speak. Again, it's all built into a database and a computer system. And so this new model, yes, absolutely, those things will count in towards that. So if I'm someone that gives $500 a year to football through the Brotherhood, then that $500 would also show up then as a $500 contribution to the Yote Fund. And you would be eligible to receive any benefits tied to that as well.
How about when it comes to tailgate spots? I know that was a big focus point in this. People want to get out on Saturdays during football season when it's nice, of course, and tailgate.
Yep.
Are we restarting from scratch on the tailgate area, reshuffling? If I have a tailgate spot, do I get to keep that thing for next season? How does all that work?
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. We're not doing an overhaul of the tailgate area. We're not doing an overhaul of the seating at this point. There'll be a time and a place for that, but that's not coming right now. Again, the good thing about the new system is if I'm paying $600 for a tailgating spot, that'll actually now count into my points and everything that I'm doing, and it hadn't before. But actually, we're doing the opposite of that. We're adding more tailgate spots. We're taking some other priority parking offline because tailgating's gotten so popular. So we're extending. I think it's an additional, couple dozen spots or 20 spots, something like that. That kind of over closer to the tennis courts and closer to the arena entrance. So it's an area we know has grown and has gotten very, very popular, and we're actually creating more opportunity with this. But again, those dollars would not have counted towards my total support score, and now they will.
What about, I've been a USD fan my entire life, and as you grow older, some of those people want to give in a big, big way. They have large estate gifts type of thing. Does that count in the annual giving?
It doesn't, mainly because it's a cash thing, right? This is all counting dollars in the current year and then dollars given over a lifetime. And so I will say that a next step for us in our process is to probably create some type of society, but that's more of just a recognition piece, and that's probably more just in totality to say, hey, this collection of individuals have all indicated to us that we are in their estate plans, USD Athletics in particular. And so how do we recognize that group? I think it would be more in line with that. But primarily, we wouldn't want to do that because all of a sudden then we could have a bunch of 30 or 40-year-olds signing estate pledges for 50 grand, and now we're rewarding $50,000 of which we may or may not ever get. And so that would just be a can of worms that we couldn't open. But certainly once the cash comes in, it will be recognized, and while that might not help the account holder or the person that is deceased in that, there's some family legacy things and other things like that we can talk about in the future, and I know I've already had conversations with donors about that.
How about like other areas of campus? I mean, if somebody has gone to business school here, for example, and they want to give back to that because it helped launch their career into what they're doing today, things like that, Coyote Beginnings, can any of that count towards Yote Fund?
It won't, and I'm not going to say that it can't in the future, but I can tell you I've seen a few examples of this being tried primarily at bigger schools like the Minnesotas, Michigans of the world. And they didn't last very long. Especially in the time today, we're certainly not competing with anybody on campus, and I don't want anyone to perceive it that way at all. But it's just about the dollars that you give to athletics to support ultimately what we're doing here, and and all the benefits we incur have costs to them, and so if we're giving points out for dollars that aren't coming in here, we don't have the funds to invest in the things in return, hospitality and otherwise. And so that's the main reason. I would love to see a plan someday in the future that could include that. But we got some work to do before we get there.
Over the years, all of the giving builds up points, right?
Yep.
And some people have built those up for years. Are those going away, or do they move over to the new system?
Yeah, no, so they will all count. We're implementing, I believe, I think the new model will essentially be for lifetime giving, it'll just dump into a score of 1 point for every $100. We'll go back as far as information is good, which I think right around the 2000 range is. I remember we did this when I was here the first time when we implemented a Paciola in our ticketing system. We had to do a similar thing here with points, and I think that was about as far back as the system would let us go. So we will do that. That will all be counted in the score when we roll it over to start a new fiscal year in July 1st, and that'll all be added up in there.
Let's talk about premium area access.
Yeah.
You know, some people come and they bring kids or grandkids, things. How does eligibility for members who frequently come to games, how does that work in the premium access areas?
Yeah, so we are actually having a different approach to our premium areas, trying to, even in the Dome Club, Coyote Landing, spaces like that, actually have ticketed seating in there. And so we'll offer more premium seating tickets to purchase. There are certain people that like to sit in the Dome Club up against the glass or sit at a table in the Dome Club. And then similar with the Core Trust Club, it'll be courtside seats, and we're adding 16 courtside seats on the west baseline. And if we sell out of those, we'll certainly look to add additional ones. We tried to add the second row of courtside seats, but we couldn't in good faith do that. The views were, I actually had Cassidy and Carly Duffney sitting in front of me, and I couldn't in good faith make that leap. It was a pretty bad obstruction. So we ended up just going on the baseline. But then again, kind of going back to, we want to be able to provide a good experience in those areas. Well, this room was built for the number of seats out here, right? And so we do want to have some controls in place. And while I understand a lot of our games might have 1,000 or 2,000 people there, and hopefully that can change and grow over time too. And it's not an issue. We have to implement policies and rules that are designed for when it is full, right? And ultimately those are the rules that we have to set up to make sure on those games, yes, it's more crowded and busier in here, but it's still a good experience for the people that come twice a year that have access, or the people that come every game. And so having the ticketed opportunities for people to buy into those, and they can be in there the entire game, and then the rest of it will set up where based on certain donation levels, and I think that is increased for sure for this club up to 10 grand a year. And again, it's all in total. Those people would have access, but then really trying to drive access to the premium areas that are pregame and halftime, and really pushing people out into their seats during the game unless you have a ticketed opportunity to stay in those areas. So again, it'll just allow us to have a more, I guess, a strategic approach to how we run and operate these things. And we have a lot of student workers that work these doors, and unfortunately they have some not so great experiences at times. And a lot of that's our fault, right? Because the list isn't up to date or whatever it is. Well, now if we have the ticketed operation and then a shorter list of people that can come in and out from other areas, it's much more easier for us to manage. And then really encouraging people to get out to their seats during the game. Hopefully that's why they came here anyways. I know some person made a comment to me about, I like to have a quiet place to go talk to someone during a game. And the first thing that went in my head was, if I wanted a quiet place to hang out, the last place on earth I'd go to would be a football game. And so, I think hopefully we're offering a good experience out here that's enjoyable, but I'm certainly someone that believes in energy, noise, music, all of that, and Jaron and his team have done a great job, building on that and having a new game day operation for us. But I think all of those things kind of help us set up just a more manageable experience. And like I said before, when it's more manageable for us, it's much easier for us to provide a consistent experience that people value.
Let's make the casual conversations a thing for before and after the games.
You
right?
got it. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
How about, we're about 2 months, a little shy of 2 months away from Calling All Coyotes, which is a great fundraiser for the athletics department. And last year was the biggest effort ever for Calling All Coyotes. That's coming up. A lot of this Yote Fund stuff, it seems like it starts maybe in July, like July 1st, when school's out of session and there's no athletics going on. Why can't this start maybe before Calling All Coyotes, when I might be able to, buy some things or give during that, fund a Yote, things like that, and count towards this versus starting on July 1st?
Yeah, so the July 1st thing is more, it's the university and the foundation fiscal year, right? So we're a little bit stuck in what we can do and how we can do it because we're part of the institution at the end of the day. And so we need to run on their fiscal year. And so I think the biggest thing with that is what I would tell everyone is it all counts, right? Like right now we're going to start selling season tickets and renewals. All of those things are going to start to count in towards everything that you're in your level next year, right? And then, when we roll over, it's either July 1st, it's either going to be based on cash given or, the intent or a pledge. But if someone's gonna write $100,000 check and it's coming once a year, I'm not losing a whole lot of sleep over whether or not that comes in August or March. And I think the reassurance for them is, ultimately, because a lot of other companies run on different fiscal years. There's a lot of fall fiscal years, spring fiscal years. People run on quarters. People run on, half years. It's different for everybody. And so ultimately, all we're trying to do is capture within the 12-month period between July 1 and June 30 what your intent is, and then reward that accordingly. And so it all does count, and I would reassure people of that. But why our fiscal year, why that date triggers, is our fiscal year, and that's something that's pretty consistent. If you look around the country and schools that we looked at and talked to as well.
There's a lot of stuff we covered. I don't know if we missed anything. I'm sure there's more questions to come.
I'm sure people will watch this video and we'll have 50 more questions.
There's always going to be, concerns and questions in regards to the house settlement and NIL and Yote Fund and how they're all connected. Is there anything that you could think of that we missed here and just like that people need to know right now so that they can start moving forward in this direction and supporting the Yote Fund the way that you and Ben and others have envisioned?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just for people to understand the climate we're in right now, what's going on nationally, but also where we really sit in all of this. I want to be very clear with people, yes, we need to drive more revenue and we need to do that in significant ways. We're trying to do that where we're not just going after the same 50 people over and over again and bring more people in. Things we haven't talked about on here, we're doing a lot of things that will help generate money through events that aren't USD events that we're hosting here, for people that do buy single game tickets, right? And they just come to watch us in a rivalry game or at Dakota Days. We put some things in there to make sure all of that burden doesn't fall to the people that have been loyal to us and supportive of us with donors. But we're in a position where we have already made cuts. We're making more cuts. And it's very real, and it's a combination of a perfect storm of, I think just budgetarily coming in eyes wide open. It wasn't a secret, but just departmentally, the budget situation wasn't great. We knew it needed to be better. Either expenses needed to come down or revenues need to go up. Now add in the settlement to that. You're talking about a true, $1.5 million gap of what we've got to do. So, and then add in some of these other schools that are a little bit in front of us right now, and the ones in particular that are north of us. So this isn't, this isn't just us. Hey, we're trying to do all of this just so we can, pay a couple football players. It's nothing like that. It's trying to generate revenue to make sure we're providing a great experience for all 400 of our student athletes. As I said, we're looking to get as lean as we can as well. So we aren't just dumping this all on our fan base. We're in this with you. But ultimately, our budget this year is somewhere around 21 million, and NDSU's is around 30. And the primary differences in that really show up in football budgets, basketball budgets, things like that. And so, for us to continue to compete and elevate for national championships in football, Summit League championships, and everything else, we've got to go to another gear. And part of that is asking everyone to dig a little bit deeper if they can. I think part of that is bringing in another group of people, and we're trying to be very intentional about that. And so, we'll just continue to ask everyone to do what you can, maybe a little bit more if you're comfortable with it, and then do everything you can to bring some friends with you. I think the people that are watching this, they know we have a great Division I product. They know we have great facilities, great kids, great coaches, great people. And I think for the most part, when people do come, it's kind of that holy, what moment of like, this is real Division I competition. And I'll tell you what, I'm reminded of that every day walking around the hallways. I feel like I'm the shortest guy in this building, and I don't feel like I'm that short. But all these athletes, male and female, make me feel like a pretty small dude walking around here. So it's real deal stuff, but none of this is possible. We wouldn't be here without all of you listening, and we're certainly not going to get where we want to go without those people as well. And because on top of that, we're designing another $60 to $70 million in capital projects, and so the work is just getting started again. But that's also why it was important to get the Yote Fund out there to make sure people that are paying big money into facilities and endowments, other things like that, are being rewarded for it.
Those questions that pop up, people interested in maybe giving more, where's the best place for them to reach out to? And I'm sure some email inboxes have been flooded in the last week.
Yeah.
But, where do we go to now? Who do we contact for more questions and just a better understanding? Yeah,
I think so. One, Ben LeCompte and the athletic development staff, their emails are all on our website. Office numbers are all on the website. I'm always available at games and happy to answer questions. I know we were joking before about, the sword I tend to die on is one of transparency. And so, when you do ask me a question, be ready for the answer, because it's coming, whether it's what you want to hear or not. But I think everybody here, we're trying to bring everybody along, so coaches can answer questions, staff can answer questions. But I think it's anyone and everyone is available for it. And happy to answer those whenever they come.
Really appreciate your time, taking some time to answer some questions and give us a better understanding of the Yote Fund.
Yep, appreciate it. Happy to do it anytime, and go Yotes.